So the first up, Byron. I'll read your bio here. He's currently Senior Director of Engineering at ICIMS, Talent Cloud Company, where he helps teams build software that enables organizations to act, engage, hire, and advance the best talent. However, should I go on with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
However, on Christmas Day, 1983, he was among the thousands of children who received a Commodore 64 for the first time. From that Christmas morning, typing in a program from the C64 user manual to just yesterday, Byron continues to think about computer programming every day. He remains a little bit amazed that he can make a living doing so. So he'll be talking about today about modern tools for the Commodore 64, sprite animation. So everyone, Byron, Stouts.
All right. So, thanks. And I think that story is not unfamiliar to a lot of people who received a Commodore 64 for Christmas as a kid. Now, actually, I'm back on Sunday, 9:10 a.m. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that if you're interested. But today, it's actually my favorite day because the Friday, it's usually a little less packed, a little more about learning, a little more about you can talk to people a little bit more. I'm really a big fan of the Friday feel of VCF, so glad to see everybody here. So, like the program book says, I used to actually do a lot of like graph paper and design my sprites. I think I have notebooks where I was supposed to be taking notes in biology class, but instead they're full of sprites. Didn't do very well in biology class, but I seem to do okay with in technology, so that's good. And my accent might sound a little weird. It's because I grew up in a little town in Oklahoma, kind of in between everything that was cool. There's Oklahoma City, there's Dallas, and I was right in the middle of all of that with nothing near around. I like to show this slide too because not only I'm a big fan of my current company, iCIMS, but it's kind of like if in American football they talk about coaching trees and they say your style is sort of based upon the coaches that you coached with. So I like to talk about the programming languages that I've used in the past. Maybe it tells you a little bit more about me to see not only the things that I actually got paid to do, but a lot of the things that I actually did for free as well. All right, so before we get started, let's take a step back. Then we'll take a step forward. Then we'll cha-cha. Anybody got that joke? Well, anyway, so the sprites. Before they were sprites, they were called player missile graphics by Atari. That's because they realized that they needed to have something to have a way to do animation for the primary elements on the screen that didn't require the programmer to constantly erase and redraw complicated objects. So they made these hardware-based 2D bitmaps that you could move around. I think you could probably, I don't know about you, but I can actually hear the sounds between these two pictures. I remember these sounds. You might also. At the same time, TI had a graphic chip. They're putting into the 994A computer. And they had the same thing. They were working on these. They started calling them sprites because the way that they floated above the background, kind of like mystical creatures, like the sprites from Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And then when they started working on the 64, they took a tour. They looked at what the Atari had. They looked at what TI had. They looked at other ColecoVision and some other systems. And they kind of took all the best of those things when they put the VIC-2 chip together, which, as you know, the VIC-2 chip was what powered the C64. And they started, for a while they called them managed object blocks, MOBs. And I think in the early versions of the programmer's reference guide, they're still called mobs for a little bit, more like appendixes, I believe. But then they started adopting sprites, as the rest of the industry did. And sprites are amazing because they can be moved all over. They're hardware controlled, so they're easy to do. You got the high-res mode, the multicolor mode. You can detect when they collide with each other. You can detect when they collide with a background. And all of these features, of course, made it a pretty amazing game machine, right? Amazing things that you could do with a Commodore 64 at the time that nobody else was doing. But as a programmer, when you looked at that and said, I want to do some of those things, I can do that. And you're like, oh, wow. Sprites are just made up of numbers. And you have to learn how to do binary math to handle these registers. And like, oh man, it's like a high bar to entry to figure out how to do one of those cool graphics on the screen, right? And also, you have to like know all these registers. There's all of these, there's like 46 registers in the VIC chip that you have to know how to manipulate these things. Some of them are binary registers, some of them are decimal registers, they're flags, they're different, and it's a lot of work. But luckily, computers are meant for doing lots of good math, right? So there were actually editors you could use on the machine going back to, like I said, 1982. This is the Sprite Master 64. And that gave you some ways you can draw, and it would do all those calculations for you, which is pretty cool. But, actually, let's take one more half step forward. 2 really good books that I had when I was growing up. Highly recommend them even today. Good places to start. Okay, but because we live in the future, we no longer have to worry about having to do all that math, do we? Unless you want to. So there's some other tools we're kind of going in the order of the least amount of help it will give you to the most amount of help it will give you, okay? So this is sort of the order we'll go through. And I don't know why this product exists, really. I've never met Mr. Lavoie. I hope he has a great business selling these, but yes, you can buy a sketch and design book that's essentially his graph paper on Amazon today, if you really wanted to. So the least amount of help, right there. Go to Amazon, buy some graph paper. People love Excel. Excel does wonderful things. Excel is amazing, and it's even people are teaching data science. The first tool they want you to learn is Excel nowadays. But Excel does calculations, so there's a lot of different versions. Here's 2 of them that I'm kind of a fan of. But there's a bunch more. But they do the same thing. They give you a grid. You can kind of like mark out your pixels, and it will do all the calculations, and you can like export all the data statements for you. So that's a little more help than graph paper. All right, so now the next step up in help is going to be some more tools. But first, I want to talk about pixel art. Pixel art games are crazy popular. I mean, does everybody recognize that first block there? Minecraft, right? So Minecraft and Stardew Valley and Terraria, there's a whole bunch of games that use pixel art. Now, there's a bunch of tools too. If you search for pixel art, there will be literally millions of hits of PNG graphics you can download, in-browser editors you can use, tools you can download to edit pixel art. But the problem is, those pixels are not the same as what works on a C64. A C64 sprite is 24 by 21. A common format in pixel art games is 35 by 35. And their color palette is like a little more wide open. So if you try to use some of those tools, you'll end up with a dead end really quick, because they'll be trying to give you sizes that don't work. They're going to try to give you, palettes that you can't work with. So be careful when you start looking for too many tools, because the pixel art, while it's cool, usually isn't the right size. All right, anyway. First one I want to talk about is a browser-based tool called Spritemate. A guy in Germany made this one, and it's pretty cool because it does have all those Commodore 64 specific restrictions. It knows your color palette. It knows how big you can be. It's got all the things you'd expect for how to manipulate images, and it's got some really cool stuff for how you can export what you do. And this is all browser-based. Doesn't say you don't have to have an account. It doesn't save anything on the server. It just runs in your browser. It's all JavaScript code. Well, anyway, so I'm not connected to the internet here, so I made a little GIF of some of the things you can do. You can move the images around, and of course you can paint with the images to move the pixels and things like that. It's really handy if you need to do something small, something quick. It does kind of support the Sprite Pad, which is sort of the universal format for dealing with Commodore 64 sprite tiles. You can import and save those, and it's pretty cool. But the best part about this is what it gives you to export. So after you've done something here, maybe you found a piece of art from somewhere else, and you can pull it into Spritemate real quick. Then you can export it with a bunch of different options here. You've got a way you can save it as a Sprite Pad file again, which you can manipulate with other programs. It gives you a way you can generate little assembly code, and it will have a small little stub to show the sprite that you just did. You can generate basic code. This is the example here that generated a little bit of basic code, and it computed all my data statements for me. So the export, I think, is probably one of the coolest parts of using Spritemate. All right, so let's go one more step forward with more help. And this is the program I just sort of referred to it already. It's called Sprite Pad Pro. It's been around forever, right? 2003 was the very first version. They've went through some situations where it was a paid program for a while, then it was a free program for a while, shareware for a while. Right now, it's not free. It's $8. So if you're going to be doing a lot of art, it's well worth the spend. They also have an amazing tool that is a companion tool called Charpad, which is for doing custom characters. And it gives you some of the same things. And a lot of the video games that we saw earlier, right, the background's all custom characters. And the foreground, the actors, those are all sprites. So having a good custom character generator and a way that you can put those together, it's a great tool. So you can actually bundle them in a purchase. I think they give you a couple bucks off if you buy both at once. Anyway, this is sort of like the granddaddy or the Cadillac of all image editing programs for Commodore sprites. And it's got some really cool stuff for animation I'll show you. And it also has a way to do tiles, because if you want to do something with multiple sprites, that's one of the tricks that people use frequently is they won't just do something with one sprite. They'll do something with like 4 sprites that are connected together, and even possibly even overlaid together. So it gives you a way that you can do those. I'm going to show you also, I think, the coolest part of this, which is a snapshot ripper, where you can take an image of memory from an emulator, and you can examine it with Sprite Pad Pro and find the sprites that the programmers put. That's by far the coolest feature. Anyway, so let's go and try to do a real demo. So this is always challenging, right? Doing a real live demo here. I gotta use my touchpad without a mouse. So let's see if I can get through this. Anyway, this is Sprite Pad Pro. When you first load it up, it kind of shows you like this default layout window, but there's a whole lot of different ones. And let me make sure I got my notes so I don't skip something I wanted to show you here. All right, here we go. So it ships with a lot of like demos, and one of the demos I'm going to show you has a really, really cool look to it, and it's a great way to demo and really knock someone's socks off the first time they see the program. So this is from a game that they've pulled all the sprites together. This section up here, actually, hang on, let's try this and I'll try to give you a little tour here. All right, this section up here is a sprite set. It's essentially a file that has all the sprites that you have in your program. So this has, or in your file, right? So this has 162 sprites in it. And you can see each one of these sprites is a piece. So the main character here is actually made up of 2 sprites. And so when they start looking at trying to make him run, it's actually a combination of these 2 sprite sets with different positions for, slight variations of his legs and his arms, just like an old school animation when you used to flip through on a notebook. So anyway, the sprite set shows you everything that you have in the file. The sprite editor here is where you actually do your work, and the palette's over here so you can change around which colors you're using. You're still controlled within what's actually inside the C64 palette, but you can do that. So when you click one of the pieces up here in the sprite set, it brings you that down, and you can edit that one over here. And then over on the side, there's the sprite animations. So each one of these tiles, it says, all right, from your set of sprites, what do you want to see? So this first one says show sprite 0 through 7. The one below it says show sprite 8 through 15. So you think you start to figure out how you can build your animations from your library of sprites that exist in the setup there. But the coolest part now, this is where you need to hang on, so this is going to get pretty cool. You can play these animations because it's set the your clock speed you can play around with, because you might be editing these sprites for a different machine than a C128, or it might be C65, dare I say. So anyway, so you can play, you can set up the delays, you can set up that, and then you can actually play and actually show how those animations would work if you're using those tiles. So this is a really good way without having to do any programming that I can just set up and say, in the design mode, what does it look like? All right, maybe that's too much. Maybe I just need to play, you know, one frame at a time to get the animations to where I want them. So that is a pretty cool feature that Sprite Pad has. All right, but I wanted to show you the really cool thing, right, which was the emulator. So you know that when you're running in a Vice emulator, you can actually save the memory snapshot. And you can, like, it's really good because you can return to that memory snapshot later without having to, you know, wait for the 1541 simulated disk to load. That takes 20 minutes. So once you've got it, you can save that snapshot. Super handy for when you want to run an emulator and be able to return to a known state. But, so they take advantage of that. So I can go up here and do, under their import export menu, they have this emulator snapshot ripper. All right, so let me zoom back in here again. All right. There, oh. All right, so select a snapshot file. I'm going to go browse, and I have a game that I was messing with in December. It's called Merry Christmas. It's not my game. It's from Melbourne House. It's a fun game. It's a combo graphic text adventure. Anyway, so I've got this Vice snapshot here of it. So, all right, well, that doesn't look like any pictures. That doesn't look like any sprites. All right, let's try a different piece of memory. Nope, I don't see any sprites in there either, but let's check there. Whoa, that starts to look like something, doesn't it? But I'm looking at it as if they're multicolor, because you know that sprites are stored in 64-byte chunks, right? So if you do multicolor, you don't get to use all that. Half of that data is picture, half that data is color. But if I say, all right, let's just look at them as if they were just high resolution, if they were just like, just all they were was color. So they start to really show now, okay, I see some real pictures here. So I'm like, all right, so let's select from bank 3 here and pull it in. All right, let me zoom out again. All right, so it pulled in what I wanted here, and let's see if I can do some of this without having to go there. All right. So there's a bunch of this stuff that's not sprites. This looks like it's garbage. This is not background image. These are not tiles. This is just garbage. But if I keep down here, those are where it looks like there's images. The brown's kind of hard to see, so let's change my palette. I'm going to change my palette to say, let's try to use white here. So, okay, wow, they're starting to show up a little bit better. I'm starting to see something here. All right, so you can kind of see that they're doing something with multiple sprites to put together a picture, right? This looks like I would think 4 pieces of Santa Claus. So how do I be able to see what those look like assembled together? And they have this tile set editor. So if I go ahead and enable that, it redraws me here, and it's going to give me this this tile editor. All right, let me make this a little bit bigger. All right, so back up here in my sprite set, I want to put things into this tile editor. You know, let me try zooming in, see if I can get this a little more visible for you. Okay. So I'm going to say, use my sprite brush, and I can just scroll down here past all this garbage and start finding that Santa Claus guy again. Okay. So I think this looks like my top left, I think, right? Oh wait, did I select that wrong? There, that looks like my top left. And I think this guy, my top right, yeah, all right, he's coming together now. Okay, and now I gotta find what I think is his bottom left. I think it looks like that. So pop that in there, okay. And there's one more piece missing there. Let's put him in there. So you can see now that those are 4 sprites. that make up the Santa Claus graphic. And I can now take that, and if I wanted to use that for some other purpose, up here in their things, they have ways you can do exports of all sorts of different things. And not only as a binary file, but yeah, let's look at that. So I can export my whole set, which is, right in this set here, 257 images, of which 250 of them are garbage. But you could do that. You could export just this tile set. And for the tile set, let's see, I could put it together as a binary file, or there's a way to do a PNG file that somehow I think I got out of the menu for that. Is it import, export, an image from a tile set? Yeah, that's the way. So I could actually take that and put that as a PNG file if there's something else I wanted to use in another program or anything like that. Anyway, that is the short version of Sprite Pad Pro. All right. Pretty cool. Might be worth the $8 if you're going to be doing a lot of this. So, for people that were here last year, I gave a talk about the CBM PRG Studio. I'm a big fan. I use it a lot. So I think the rest of the talk we're going to kind of focus on what and how you could do some of the sprite animation in this. And this is where, as we're looking at my tool chain, we're at the spot where this is the one that gives you the most help. So this is where we're going to end up. Anyway, the PRG Studio is pretty amazing. It's been around for a while too, since 2011. There's the new version 4 was released in December, so it's still pretty fresh. It's free, which is cool, but it's not open source. It's built on the Microsoft.NET framework, so that means you kind of need to run it on Windows, unless you want to do something clever with Wine on Linux. That is possible. And it has support for every Commodore 8-bit machine, including the ones that have been made recently, like that C65 support, which is kind of cool. It's a full-featured IDE, right? Got Git integration. You can it's got these editor tools to help you with sprites, characters, a screen designer. It's got a SID tool. I don't do a lot with music, but it's got a pretty good SID tool, people tell me. The code formatting, all the things it can give you as an editor, as just a pure code editor, super helpful. I mean, you look at that code, I've got white space, and it's got color coding, block space comments and things like that. You can see your code so much better than when you're looking at it on a little Commodore screen, right? The screen editor, which we're going to demo, really easy way to put together a whole thing. I used to do these with my keyboard and looking at the Petsky graphics and like poking away. Then I'd come back later and add a bunch of print statements in front of it, just try to get screens together. So the screen editor is really nice. We're going to spend quite a bit of time in the sprite editor, which is the reason why we're here. It's got a really nice sprite editor that allows you to design, draw, test your animations, and then save it out to code. So we're going to spend some time there. So into the demo, we're going to actually build, using these tools, this little demo guy here, which I call Bill. He's not a plumber, he's an electrician. Nothing else similar about any other characters we have here. All right, so let's jump into CBM PRG Studio. And first thing is, we're going to do some zooming, but let's make that font a little bit bigger, right? That is not going to work for all of us here in the room. So let's go in here, and I'm going to make this this source code font a little larger. Let's go for 26, see if that will help us. Oh wait, I know what I did here. The default location. All right. Oh, I thought I did that. Enter a default project location. Is that not valid? Oh, it's not valid. That's why. I moved that last night. That's why I was confused. Let's do 2023. Okay. There we go. That's a little better. I don't know. Should I go even larger? No. All right, we're sticking at 26. All right. So anyway, let's go into the magnifier now so I can take you around the project. All right, so as a project, it has these different folders like you would see in a real IDE, which is kind of cool, right? You can have multiple basic files in a project. It will actually smash them together and do things like that, which is kind of cool. If I had character data, I got 2 sprites here that I was messing around with. Got some screen designs. So it's kind of neat to see that. Like I say, I pulled in some of the code here already. Just so we don't have to watch me type all of this, but it's a pretty simple bit of code that's going to pull some sprites together. Where am I at? There's my cursor. All right. And define an animation track and, go through it. So that's what I got so far, just so we didn't have to watch me type that. So the first thing I want to actually show, I'm showing those screen designs. So this is the screen designer tool. And I'm going to zoom in on this. So the screen designer tool gives you a palette, and you can mess with that palette and put things on it either by, the list of these character codes. It's got a little handy map here, or some other things and ways you can find and select things. So let's add a little something else to this play screen here, and I'm going to, want my character code to be yellow, and just sort of like click, and then you click over here, and it just sort of draws the characters on the screen. So I'm going to make I don't know, I guess that's sort of a sunshine, I don't know, do that there. All right, so then the cool thing about, these screen designs is after you've got them, you can, it'll generate all the basic code for you, or assembler code, but we're using basic right now, so I want to make something that was really easy for people to understand. So here, go to the export, and you can say I want to export it as basic. Gives you some options, and let me zoom in here again. Whether you want to generate the empty rows and things like that. And so I want to generate this. I want to start at line number, let's say 20,000, because I have this already kind of set up. All right, so let's say generate starting at line 20,000, and it will build some code for me. All right, that looks like weird code, doesn't it? Let's copy this to the clipboard, close that preview, and go back to the editor. Save that screen. All right, so I copied that code to the clipboard, so let me paste it in here. And there's a bunch of code. Now, the trick here, why does this code look so funky? It's because this editor is ASCII. It doesn't know PETSCII characters. It doesn't know how to display PETSCII characters. So there's a whole pseudo language called Talk64. There's another one that's competing, but I'm a fan of Talk64 that converts and pre-parses those. So when we see this over on the 64, it will have converted all this to PETSCII. But it's ASCII now, so you got to see it that way. All right, so I need to add couple things here to make sure this works properly. A bug, I think, in the screen editor is it doesn't put the following semicolon here at the last line of code it generates. So I got to add a semicolon there. Otherwise, it's going to roll off the screen. I don't know why that bug hasn't been fixed. And then I'm going to use this in there we go. I'm going to use this in a Go sub, so I need to make sure I have a return here. All right, so that's the first screen. Now, I'm going to be loading some sprite data, and I'm doing this in BASIC for readability, but BASIC is going to be kind of slow when it has to process a bunch of sprite data. So I want to make an entry screen too. So I've got this intro screen here, pretty straightforward, and same thing. We could add some. How am I doing on time? Yeah, I got plenty of time. All right, I could add some more, a couple more characters, just to show you how this, this really works. Yeah, that's okay. A couple more checkerboards. There we go. And 2 more, then we'll generate this screen to code as well. All right, so same thing, file, export to basic. Now this one, let's make this 10,000 because put that in a different spot. All right. So there, generates all my code for that. Copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to close this screen editor. Yes, I am going to save it. I just made a change to it. And all right, let's copy that code into there. Same thing. I need to make sure I go to my semicolon. And something really cool here, when I hit return, you see that the next line number, 10,025. When I hit return, it auto-generates my next line number. Love that feature. All right. So now, I got my two screens, so let's do some sprites. That's why we're here, right? Okay, so, yeah, let's tell this guy. Let's go there. Okay, this is the sprite editor. Let me zoom in and I'll show you what this little tool does. Okay, so it gives you an editing area here. Now, I've said that this is a multicolor sprite. So it knows that it's I'm only going to be able to use 21 across. If I were to say it's not a multicolor sprite, then one, it doesn't know what to do with it because I've lost my color data. It also inserted all the extra rows there to make this the right width. But we're working with multicolor sprites today. In the preview here, you can expand the sprites vertically and horizontally. So in the preview, you can also see what they look like if you do that. Now, I designed this guy so he's got a vertical expansion. He doesn't, I'm not using a horizontal expansion. Okay. I've also set my color palette here, because on the color palette for multicolor sprites, if you know, then it gives you, there's three registers that control that. There's one register that says like all your multicolor sprites can use this one color, and all your multicolor sprites can use this color. You get two colors that all the multicolor sprites have to use. And then you get one color that says, all right, for every sprite, here's your base color. So in other words, the background here is what is when there's no pixel defined. The number 10 register is what is the color of the individual sprite. Multicolor 1, multicolor 2. So you can set a color palette here so that all your previews are going to be using the right stuff. All right, so this is a sprite set. I have one sprite here. Then I've got him taking a first step, leaning to the right. Kind of got a middle step as he's pulling his arms down in the middle of that animation. Then I've got one if he's like kind of taking that last step. So I designed these by kind of trial and error. I'm not much of an artist, but I started with the base one here, and I would copy and paste the base one there and just start manipulating pixels until it looks right, because I can see the preview of what it looks like from there. So what we've got is him standing and one full animation taking one step to the right. So what if he's going to the left? I need animations for that. So I'll kind of take you quickly through how you do that without having to watch me pick pixels all day. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add a new sprite to this set. So now I've got sprite 5. And I want sprite 5 to be the equivalent of sprite 1 here, where he's just standing. So I want to copy that. And if I go back over here, back to sprite 5, paste that in. All right, so that's him standing to the right, but I want him standing to the left. All right, so I want him standing to the left. So what you do is these controls here. These controls allow you to shift up pixels. In other words, if I was rolling it like that. It also allows you to, if I wanted to say shift to the left or shift to the right, so you could get some things figured out there if you needed to. But it also allows you to flip it. So since he's looking to the right, I want him to flip him that direction. So he's now standing to the left. Got it? Cool. All right, so that's one of them. So now I also need to have, for all the other three, I need one. So let's pick another new sprite, sprite 6. And sprite 6 is going to be number 2 here, which is his right first step. So copy him again. Go back over to number 6, paste that in, and I want to flip it. And now that is a left first step, isn't it? Okay. All right, now we need to do this 3 more times. So let's see if I can do this efficiently on my trackpad. All right, number 3 is the middle step. Copy that. And, oh, I need to make a new sprite for number 7. There's number 7. Paste that one in, flip him around. Let's rename it. These names are really for your benefit, and also when you generate the code, it will put remark statements in there that gives you the names too, can help you find the sprites again once you look at it as data. All right, and then we need one more, our final one. So let's make a new sprite here for number 8. And that's a copy of number 4, which is his last step. Copy him, and go and paste him in here and flip him around. Let's rename that so we are helping ourselves in the future by keeping track of what these are. All right, so now that gives me a sprite set now that shows the, I've got 4 sprites that represent him going to the left and 4 sprites going to the right. All right, one more thing I want to show down here. Remember in Sprite Pad Pro where I had the animation thing? I could say, all right, show me what it looks like when I show like these 4 sprites. You can do the same thing here. So for that, if I want to see the right side animation, that's Sprite 2, and it's because I don't have a lot of steps. It ends in Sprite 4. And then you can define whether you want it to loop when you show this animation. So it'll show 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, or you can ping pong it, which is 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, like that. All right. And you can set the delay. So I'm going to move the delay a little bit so we can see what's happening. But I can't seem to click there, so let's try this again. Drag it. There we go. Anyway, it'll show kind of what you're dealing with here as you're messing around with it. Kind of cool. So if I want to see those same things going to the right, those same numbers I want to see is 6 through 8, right? 6 through 8. Come on, get down there. My magnifier's fighting me. There it is. All right. So that's him running to the left. So that's kind of the cool way to see what you got before you do anything else in code. All right. So now I've got this neat little 8 set sprites. Let's generate this to code. Let me do one thing here, some housekeeping before I go too far. All right. I don't want that there. Oops. All right. Unlike the screen editor, which gave me a nice thing where it copied to the clipboard and allowed me to paste it, when I do the sprite editor, for whatever reason, it just sticks it right where my insertion point is, so I gotta make sure I'm in a good spot before I generate this code. All right, I want to point out something else since I'm here. Remember that TOC64 code I was talking about? This is kind of cool, huh? So that's where the power starts coming in. So I didn't have to put down and down and down and down and down. You can use the multiplier here. So kind of like Python in terms of ways you can tell it to put 12 downs or 10 of these. So really handy with the screen codes. All right, so I got my insertion point here. Let's go back to my sprite editor. And when I want to export this code, I want to export it to a listing. You could export it to memory. You could export it to a binary file. But I'm going to do it to a listing since I'm working with some basic code here. And my options are, do I want it as basic data? Do I want it as assembly data? Where are my line numbers at? What's my increment? I don't really need a program increment of 10 here because it's just data statements, right? I want 6 data values per line. And I'm doing decimal since I'm doing it in basic. And you can also say, do I want to generate the data for all the sprites, or do I want to just generate the data for like 1 or 2 of them? So it's got options for that. So I'm going to say generate all the data for all my 8 sprites. And as promised, it put that generation right behind me into where my insertion point was into the code. So then I've got pre-calculated for me all of the data that's necessary to represent those 8 sprites. Man, you know how long it would take me by hand when I was in high school to calculate all these? That would have been like days. Anyway, cool stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what the code is now. I showed you some of it shortly. And hopefully I've done all this right and it runs the first time. Let's see. All right, first of all, handy stuff. See how this gives you the code-only comments? this exclamation dash here, when I compile this and send it to the emulator later, it's going to strip out all those code-only comments. It's just only going to send what the 64 needs. So anyway, yeah, clearing the screen, nothing fancy there. I'm going to show the intro screen that we built. I'm going to animate this using one sprite. You're like, wait, you just built 8 sprites. Why are you saying you're using one sprite? I'm going to use one sprite, and I'm going to change the memory location that sprite 0 is pointing to. I'm going to do that fast so that you don't see. Now you could have done this differently, right? You could have said, I want to show sprite 1 and sprite 2, and you could have like turned them on and off and moved them like that. Sometimes that's a little slower. I'm going to use one sprite, I'm going to change the position of that sprite, I'm going to point the memory from that animation to that animation to that animation like that. So it's only going to be like, Vic is going to be dealing with one chip, and the redraw is going to be handled by hardware. So I'm using the one sprite. So we've got a spot here where we're going to read all those data statements in and put them all into memory. So I'm going to put all 8 sprites into memory. Then this line 200, 210, that's going to show that play area that we generated the screen for. And remember I told you about the colors that the sprites can use, right? So I'm only using sprite 0, so I'm just putting that as black. And then the multicolor that's used for all the sprites, I'm going to set that one to the yellow and the red that we saw in the sprite editor. All right. I have to tell Vic that they're using multicolored. This is one of those binary registers because I can say I'm using one because I'm only using one sprite. If I was using 2 sprites, it wouldn't be 1, right? It'd be 3. So anyway, that's just some of that binary math that you have to know. The magic numbers you have to know in the VIC chip. I'm going to expand that sprite vertically because I'm not using the horizontal, just the vertical. Turn it on, and this is the animation sequences I have. So this is a simplified version just to kind of show it as a demo. I've got those 4 positions, right? I got the position of him standing straight. I got one right step, a right middle step, and a final right step. So that's my right animation, RA. I've got the same thing as a left automation, where you're standing straight, then the 3 steps to the left. So those are the memory locations that I loaded that data at in those previous data statements. So I'm just going to tell sprite 0 to like point to either memory location, 193, 194, 195, you got it, like that. So some stuff here, I'm using their cursor keys as, go right, go left. And if there's no motion, I'm making him look forward, and then I do a little thing here on line 370 to see what his last direction was. If his last direction was to the right, then I show the one with him standing with his head to the right. If his last direction was to the left, I show that one, so that's that little bit there. And then this is it right here. I take all the steps at once, and I'm doing a couple of things here that are kind of cheats. I'm not letting him go too far to the left of the screen, so if he gets to 10, I'm not going to let him go any further. But all I do is say, all right, that poke 2040 is where is the data for sprite 0? I'm saying the data for sprite 0 is going to be at whatever that animation spot is. And that will cause the VIC chip to redraw and show the one that I want there. And then by poking V plus 0, that's the location of sprite 0, so that means I'm moving it. And then even in BASIC, this is a little too fast to see. So I have a short little delay here. If I was doing something more complicated in this program, I probably wouldn't have this delay. I'd probably be doing something else. I'd be probably moving enemies or redrawing backgrounds or things like that. But because this demo program doesn't do anything, I slowed it down artificially just so you could see it. And then the right animation is similar, and that's it. That's the demo code. So, do you think I did all this right and it's going to actually build? It's a demo. It probably never runs the first time. All right, fingers crossed. Let's see what happens. All right, so the cool thing about CBM PRG Studio, if you haven't seen this before, it's magic because it just built that code and launched my editor and is loading it up directly right there. So loading it from that the artificial disk that CBM PRG Studio built for me. This is where we're loading all those sprites that I have to do because it takes a while, right? Got to load all 7 of those sprites. Actually, it's 8 sprites because I start with 0. And then there he is. I messed up something because he's got one line rolled off the screen, didn't it? Maybe we'll go back and fix it. Anyway, this is it. If I go to the right left arrow key, it plays that animation. There he is, my clunky animation. If I go to the left, it plays the left animation and puts his head, when it faces forward, back to the left. So there it is. There's Bill the electrician in Sprite Land. There you go. I'll post this code back onto the Discord if anybody really wants to see it. I kept this intentionally simple in a lot of ways. I don't know if I would use these same ways in a real program I was doing, but it's in basic code. Everybody can understand it. There you go. But I did want to show you real quick the listing, right? Because I showed you and what the code looked like inside CBM PRG Studio with all the spacing and stuff like that. But the code that it actually put over here, all that's stripped out. It's just the pure C64 Basic 2.0 code. Very cool. All right. I got it right, except for the whole thing with it like scrolling up one line. I think did I not put a semicolon after that? I thought I put a semicolon after that. Yeah, there's a semicolon there. Huh. I bet if I take out something like that, that'll do it. All right. Well, I had built in a little more buffer time because I expected to have more problems here, but we were successful, so we're a little bit early ahead of time.
It actually looks better on ops down.
There's a little bit of background behind him? Yeah, because it was before he was like right on the horizon. I think maybe I should just leave it that way. It was intentional. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I had. I just would say I will post these into the Discord channel. Got some links to if you want to go and download those Excel things or want to have the link to where you get CBM PRG Studio from. If you start searching, and yeah, that's how I built Bill, the electrician. Bill the electrician was built from a sprite sheet that I Googled, and you can find millions and millions of sprite sheets, which are, a sprite sheet is essentially a tile set, and it has all the different animations, and you can look at them there. So you can find millions of sprite sheets if you want to. That's probably a good way, unless you're really artistically inclined, that's a good starting point for me. And then I just encourage everyone, this is a hobby, you know, there's a few people that maybe make money building Commodore programs these days, but not many. It's just for fun. I enjoyed doing this little demo. I was really, you know, cracking myself up at it when I had some weird animation with him at one point, and I had to call my daughter down, and she just looked at it and said, like, what are you doing, Dad? I don't know, she didn't care. But I got a lot out of it, so I encourage you to get out of it what you put into it as well. So that's all I had. Thanks for listening. Any questions I can entertain before you go off to your next talk? Go ahead.
Any Linux or Mac tools for doing the same thing?
Oh, so the question is whether any Linux or Mac tools for doing the same thing. The honest answer is I don't know. I'm a Windows person. If you put a Macintosh in front of me, I wouldn't even know how to like open up a browser probably. I would assume there are because of the boom in pixel art. So I'm sure there are tools out there. Well, whether those tools are going to be Commodore specific or not, that's a hard one. And you can still use those tools. You just got to be aware of like, all right, I can't use all 35 pixels. I have to make sure that I'm using, 3 and there are only the 16 colors available. So yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else know if there's any sprite editors for Commodore 64? Yeah, I don't know.
Sprite Pad.
Is there a Macintosh version of that though? 'Cause I know that's written in .NET.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a tool to extract custom character sets?
Is there, also the question is there a tool to extract custom character sets? I don't know. I didn't buy the Sprite Pad Pro. I'm assuming it is because you can use, in Sprite Pad, you can take PNG files, like I was showing that tile set. You can import a PNG file and it will split it into sprites. I'm assuming there might be something similar for characters. I don't know. I didn't buy the Sprite Pad Pro. Good question though. All right. Well, like I said, Friday's my favorite day, so enjoy your day here, and I'll see you around. All right. Thanks, everybody.